Hello, welcome back to Nia Handcrafted. I'm a candle and soap maker, and today we're going to be making some soap, or watching how we do these Goats and Roses soap, which is our most popular, most requested soap. And a couple weeks ago we showed you our second or third best-selling candle, and so I thought it was just fair to show you one of the soaps as well. This is for sure not a recipe I would recommend for beginners, although do as I say, not as I do, because I definitely took on some big projects as a new soap maker. But if you feel relatively comfortable, it's not a terrible one. We are working with two colors, and we are working with a fragrance oil that accelerates. So it's possible that this might be a little bit too advanced for you. And I'm also not gonna mention much more than the basics of lye safety. So there's a plethora of videos out there on YouTube. Make sure that you're starting out with some that's just an intro to soap making and just what you need to do to get set up and be safe. There's no colorants in this. The pink that you see is from the clay, and that kind of ivory color is just because I control the temperature of the milk. And if I had kept it even colder, it would have been even whiter. Sometimes I get a really nice creamy white without adding any titanium dioxide. So you can get a really light color, and I'll show you what I do to make sure that that happens. One method I used to use was to just use all ice cubes and then adding the lye slowly into the ice cubes. I prefer to bring my solution to a light emulsification, like just barely emulsified, and then add the milk. I'll show you a picture of a bar here. This is what happened when I added the goat's milk directly to the oils and then added the lye water solution. I ended up with saponified little goat milk balls, and I'm trying to get it as fluid as possible, so I don't use that technique. So you'll see me later. I didn't actually get myself pouring the goat's milk in. You'll see only the just bare end of it. That being said, let's get into it. So I use half of my solution as distilled water and the other half as goat's milk. So I'm going to start with the distilled water and the ice cubes. It's about a third water and 2/3 ice cubes. And we want to add the lye to to your whatever solution, and never the other way around. I have found that adding the sodium hydroxide in slowly prevents me from having a lot of lye lint or crystals of lye that I have to filter out. One of the clues to me that it is not ready is that it's really milky, and I'll come back and check that temp in a little while. When it's clear, it's usually ready, and that's when I'll add some sodium lactate. I don't have any kind of obsession with super white bars. I actually like an ivory or darker color, but here I'm using some refined cocoa butter. If you can find refined cocoa and shea butters, fair trade if possible, that'll help in getting you a lighter bar in your end process. My organic virgin coconut oil. Here's my fair trade shea butter going in. Here is some US grown safflower oil that's high in oleic acid, and one of the reasons I like to incorporate it is that it's US grown and I can get this at a local wholesaler, so that kind of decreases the dent in my environmental impact. So I'm putting all of my oils and butters in here to melt down together except for my olive oil. I really love the bubbles that castor oil gives us, so I typically include it at 5%. This recipe is 35% extra virgin olive oil, and if you wanted to go with a lighter bar, you could use pomace. So this room temperature extra virgin olive oil is going to bring down the temp of the heated oils and butters once they're all the way melted through. And I have it in this big bucket, which doesn't fit in the microwave anyway. So let's get all those other ones melted down. We're always looking for ways to kind of repurpose and upcycle. So these are the yogurt jars from the Oui company, which the yogurt is not bad at all. And it's the perfect size for me to measure out fragrance oils, disperse clays and micas. So I use these for that. Probably went through about 4 different rose fragrances before settling from one that's locally available. I'm slowly melting everything in the microwave. Everything except for the olive oil is going in the microwave at 30-second bursts until it is just barely melted down. I want to soak a little cooler. I add sodium lactate to my lye water solution to help the bar firm up, and like most of my supplies, I get it at Shea & Company, which is close to Portland, Oregon. I add a couple big spoons of kaolin clay, and then I mix it up with my immersion blender. I blend the kaolin clay, and that's why the oils look cloudy, and then I'm adding the lye water solution, and both of these are at about 95 degrees. So like I say, the goal here is just to blend to emulsion, like a light emulsion, and then we'll add the goat's milk in. So I just want to make sure that I've got the oil and the lye kind of making friends, binding together, and it'll just start to get thick and it won't separate at all when I lift my immersion blender out of the soap. Okay, so now we are at a good emulsion. I'm going to add the goat's milk in. Adding the goat's milk in. I like to hand mix this part. The milk has sugar, so this part can heat up the batter a little bit. Okay, I split it off. I like to have a little bit more white than pink. I do not add very much pink clay. So that's probably about 2 teaspoons. I use these shoe boxes to kind of cover it in the oven, and at this point you have to have everything ready because it accelerates, so we need to move quickly. I can't guarantee how much I'll be able to film, but I'll try. Now, because this rose fragrance does accelerate, it's not terrible, but I do mix by hand, and the tricky part is getting it mixed enough so that you are satisfied that there's going to be no separation, and also getting it on time to put into the mold. I then take the pink and I just kind of add it on all corners, and then you'll see me reach for like a stirring utensil, and then I'm just gonna put like an X or a swirl. And like I say, it's just random. I don't have any specific pattern, and then I just let it swirl how it's going to swirl. So here I just come, and when it's thick, I try and get really low. It was hard while I was doing it with the camera. If I was smart, I would have set up the camera holder and then I would have had a little bit more free hands. But, you know, I just kind of spontaneously decided to film. And so here we are, and you get what you get. Pouring this thick puts you at risk for getting some air pockets. So I'll show you how to kind of get those out. Kind of getting some of those air bubbles out, flattening it out. Okay, first try and get it relatively flat. I like to just use my spatula and kind of give it a little shimmy. So be sure you're tapping it out because I can see that some places have the potential to have air pockets in there. No artificial colorants in this. And as you can see, it's still a really pretty soap. You can achieve a lot of cool things with natural colorants. It does not need to be super flat because I'm going to play with it a little bit. And when you have botanicals on the top, actually a few little bumps are good because that can help them to adhere. Again, a couple other little taps. For the rose petals, I just like to take a fork, come down this side, because it can catch some of them in there. That's the pink salt, and you can see why I use it. The color pattern kind of matches. You could use any kind of salt, but I just like that the colors kind of go with it. I'm just giving a liberal coating on the tops of the soap, and not so much in the fork marks because I don't need it to go in the rose petals. I like to use the thicker salt because then it's not just gonna like absorb into the top. Rose petals. It's a very romantic soap. I'm not being like perfect about placement here, and a lot of these will fall off. So I go a little bit more liberal than I want to see in the finished product. I normally CPOP, which is cold process oven processing. You turn the oven on and you on the warm setting, and then you leave it there. But milk soaps have no issues going through gel phase, and I want it to stay as light as possible. It's kind of a creamy ivory color, so I'd like to leave that and keep the contrast between that and the pink, and we'll cut it tomorrow. This is actually about 36 hours later. Here's the second one. Kind of a muted pink. We're gonna get this out of the mold and cut it up. Okay, all these botanicals, I kind of get off what's gonna immediately fall off. So that's what's gonna happen. Okay. Usually you can get away with 24 hours. Closer to 36 is totally cool. Minnie, Nia in particular, loves pulling the soap out of the silicone molds. It's super satisfying. I do too. So sometimes I just have to do it by myself and just not tell them that it happened. All right, so I'm gonna just kind of drag it right along the edge. These soap shavings get sent off to Haiti to support the Anacona project. The soap is repurposed. This is a beautiful pour. I'm hoping that I get some striations. We're gonna see how I did with tapping the air bubbles out because it was so thick towards the end. I am putting the botanicals down, and the reason that I'm doing that is because if you cut it with the botanicals at the top, they're gonna drag down and it's not gonna be a very pretty bar. So let's see here how it looked. Very satisfying clink at the end. Pick one kind of from the middle. Oh, it's very good for, oh, look at that. Look at that. Lookity. I'm not seeing air pockets. There's maybe a little one. Last time I did these bars, there were some air pockets, which is not a problem. It's still soap. Once it was like right around a mermaid's tail, which kind of bothered me. There's a little one. But you know, it's like one of those things that when you make it, like if you make a cake and you've kind of frosted it lopsided, everyone else sees cake and you just see the imperfection. It's cake. This is my cake. It's a pretty soap and it will wash your body and it smells gorgeous. Watching the footage, I always think it's so cool to see the pour that you did compared to what happened in the bars of soap. They just look so pretty in the swirls, and this is just a very soothing bar to look at. I really like it. The recommendation usually is to let bars cure for about 4 weeks. We tend to let them go onwards to about 6 weeks, and some longer, of course, if they don't sell. But these bars tend to not hang around for very long. Goat's milk soap, like I said, is super popular. People love this bar. They love this scent. We are in Portland, the city of roses, so it should be no surprise to me. And I just am working on a better inventory system so that I don't run out. But this is just a stock to kind of get me through the October markets. So prior to cutting the second loaf, I'm just cleaning off the individual wires with a microfiber cloth. All of the soap residue, salts, botanicals will cause smearing, which again is just a cosmetic thing if you forget. But definitely clean those wires off. And I try to give a gift to myself and make sure after every cut that I've cleaned it off completely so that way it's done and ready for the next cut, whatever that might be. Let's do the second one. Few more botanicals coming off. The other day I had one where one was not fine to come out of the mold and one wasn't. It was the same recipe, and there's a lot of reasons for it, but it still is really trippy. Like the science of soap making, I can get really nerdy if allowed to. The silicone molds are pretty easy to clean up. I just wash them with regular dish soap and water. That it almost looks like a hillside. Really pretty. There we go. Again, botanicals down. The forearm/bicep strength here. And let's see what we've got. Again, I like this. I'm not putting them back on the paper because it's got salt on it. So I can brush the paper off and reuse it for some soap stamping that I've got going on in a minute. But I don't want to put it on the bottom. Sometimes like these, when I have them in the box, if I'm shifting them around a lot, they end up on the bottom. So you kind of have to watch that they're not just embedded in the bottom of the soap. But of all the things that go wrong with transporting stuff, that is like one of the least of my worries. I wanted to show you what it looks like labeled. Normally I don't label them because the soaps continue to shrink, but this is the label for Goats and Roses soap. If there's videos that I could make about soap making that could be helpful, please drop those ideas in the comments below. Remember to like this video if you found it helpful, and then subscribe to help us grow on our journey on YouTube. And you can always follow us on Instagram at niyyah.handcrafted or check out our website at nia-handcrafted.com. Bye.